Hello, hello. I hope you're all having an awesome Thursday and enjoying weather as good as mine. It's like 80 something degrees outside right now, and we decided no AC today, and it was a big mistake. So I just shut all the windows and the air is officially on, and I am ready to talk to you all about oxalates. And we're going to bring on my friend Melanie to talk. She is the expert in this topic, so I'm excited.
Hi, Callie.
Hi, how are you?
So good to see you. I'm good.
Are you enjoying any nice weather
So,
like mine?
so it's so funny. I heard you talking about how hot it was there. So literally like 5 minutes ago, there was like endless thunder, and I got a notification on my phone that there's like inch hail coming.
Oh
So
no.
like it's not the best weather right now, and hopefully my internet holds out, but we'll see.
Oh my God. That's so funny. Where are you again?
In Chicago.
Chicago. Oh, the Windy City.
Yes, yes, yes. It's very, very windy right now. And like pitch black outside. So
Oh my God. Did I ever
we'll
tell you
hold
the
on.
story about how I was in Chicago for 24 hours and we had a wedding and I got a deep dish pizza for the experience, and like we were knocked out for hours. Like we had to take a nap after we ate it. It was not a good
It's a lot.
experience.
Yeah, it's not something you want to do like when you want to go out and have fun. You want to just like take a nap. It's delicious, but a lot for
Yeah.
sure.
So that's my Chicago story for everyone who
That's
cares.
funny.
Yeah, yeah. So, do you want to take a sec to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure, absolutely. I see that we have some people on live, which is so exciting. It's always fun to be here with you. I feel like it's been a while since we've done something like this. So I am Melanie Betts. I am the kidney dietitian. I am a dietitian that specializes in kidney stone prevention. You can find me here on Instagram at the kidney dietitian. I also have a pretty robust blog and website, which is thekidneydietitian.org. And also I have a podcast now, which I started almost a year ago, which has been a super fun venture. And that's the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. So, yes, if you have any questions about kidney stones and also kidney disease, but I really focus on kidney stone prevention, I'm your girl.
Amazing. And people don't always connect the kidneys to the bladder, but they're literally part of the same
Yeah,
tract,
like,
the same urinary
yeah, urine,
system.
bladder, kidneys, it all goes together.
Yeah, kind of cousins here. So, the topic of the day is oxalates. And you say oxalate, and every time my brain wants to say it that way, and I just can't. So, we're going to say it differently. But why don't we start off by, can you just define what oxalates are and where you can find them?
Yeah. So oxalate is just a compound that's found exclusively in plant foods. It's a molecule that plants make for a variety of reasons. I'm not a plant dietitian, but my understanding is they make it as some sort of defense system. I'm not really sure, but they make it. And so you will only find oxalate in a lot of very, very healthy plant foods. Some of the very notoriously high oxalate foods are spinach, Swiss chard, beets, rhubarb, and almonds, and some types of beans like navy beans. So those ones are like especially high, but it's really important to remember that you're going to find a little bit of oxalate in basically every single plant food, whole grains. Literally any fruit or vegetable you have in your house right now has oxalate in it. So, and yeah,
And
short.
these are such a hot topic right now, especially within the interstitial cystitis community. I mean, you and I did a podcast interview over a year ago about this, and like this conversation is still going on of there's a subgroup of people within the IC community that like swear by a low oxalate diet, and you know, do we want to talk about the research that is there? I mean, I should say that isn't there. I
Yeah.
feel like that's a great place for us to start.
Yeah. So you talk about the IC stuff, I'll talk about the kidney stone stuff.
Mhm.
So oxalate is talked about I think most talked about in kidney stones. And that's actually, I think, maybe why Kelly and I connected initially. I'm not sure why we initially did, but I feel like it was something around
Mm.
oxalate. But we talk about it a ton because by far the most common type of kidney stone is made of calcium and oxalate. And so because of that, the the healthcare community and also people have been on this low oxalate diet thing. Like that's just been kind of the way that we treat kidney stones for a really long time. However, we now know a lot better about how a low oxalate diet really isn't going to be the best option for kidney stone prevention. And this is a whole nother tangent, but it actually could be harmful for kidney stones. Maybe we'll get there. If we have questions, definitely let us know. Um, but so it makes sense, right? Like if you have oxalate kidney stones, then maybe you should follow a low oxalate diet. It just sort of, it goes along sort of logical lines of thought. However, the problem with a low oxalate diet is you can't just reduce oxalate in your diet, because oxalate is found in all those really healthy foods that we want you to be eating for general health purposes, like whole grains and fruits and vegetables. Because again, that is the only place that you're going to find oxalate. And so when we actually look at the data, every single study that I'm aware of in the history of kidney stone prevention um, does not show that. So like dietary patterns that have more oxalate in them, like a DASH diet or a Mediterranean diet, more plant forward diets, which are going to have more oxalate, are actually associated with a lower risk of kidney stones. There's literally no study ever to show that reducing how much oxalate you eat actually reduces your risk of stones. So literally none. But we've just sort of been on this, this focus because oxalate stones are so prevalent. But it's the reason that it's not necessarily that straightforward is because when we cut out oxalate, we're going to take out a lot of really healthy foods that are actually really good for kidney stone prevention, ironically, as well. So without getting too in the weeds, things like potassium and magnesium and something called phytate, all of these things are going to be reduced in your diet if you're on a really strict low oxalate diet. And all of those things are really important for stone prevention. And again, just general health. We want you to be eating these really healthy foods. So that was a really long answer to the question of basically there is no data. Like there's literally no research that shows that a low oxalate diet will reduce your risk of kidney stones. And if anything, it could potentially be harmful because you're limiting all of these other really nutritious things, again, for your general health, but also for stone prevention, ironically, as well.
Right. And I mean, same sort of stuff. I mean, in terms of interstitial cystitis, like it is a restrictive diet. You are restricting certain nutrients if you're following it. I do want to say, I don't want to discount anybody's lived experiences here. You know, if you're somebody who has decided to follow a low oxalate diet and your IC symptoms have improved, amazing. Amazing. We're all desperate at some point. If that's the thing that helps you, okay, just make sure that, A, you're either working with a registered dietitian, or B, you're just being very careful and you're eating as much variety outside of that as possible. Now that I said
Yeah.
that. Yeah, same thing. Like there is no research supporting a low oxalate diet for IC. And also there's another theory about it can help potentially with vulvodynia, which is like pain and irritation of the vulva. But like the science and the evidence there, it just isn't, it's not there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where we're at. It sounds like with all of these conditions that we're talking about, like, could it help? Maybe. Do we need more research? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially, I think for kidney stones, we have the research to show that it doesn't work. For IC and vulvodynia, we don't have the research. We aren't really sure. I think it's really important also to kind of talk about why research is so important because I think, us as dietitians, we say that all the time, but I I think that it's really important for people to understand why we as dietitians or healthcare professionals cannot make a recommendation, and also why it's really important for you as a person trying to improve whatever health condition. It's really important for you to kind of take whatever advice you get from people in Facebook groups or, the guy next to you on the train or like whatever, why you have to kind of take that with a grain of salt. So I actually just did a whole podcast on this a couple of weeks ago. So check that out if you want to learn more about this. But um, the issue with like, oh, it worked for me is when you are listening to whomever in a Facebook group, you have no idea what's going on with their body. From my understanding from you, Callie, it seems like there's lots of different triggers with IC. It's like IC is not just one thing, just like kidney stones are not just one thing. Even the same type of kidney stone is not the same thing. I imagine for IC, even if you have the same general symptoms, the causes of those symptoms could be very, very different. And so we have no idea, like, sure, this worked for Joe Schmo next to you, but like, what's going on in Joe Schmo's body? Also, so Joe Schmo thinks that that low oxalate diet helped him or whatever it is, but like there are a gazillion different things that can impact both IC symptoms and stone formation. Your environment, the other foods you're eating, medications that you're taking, stressors, like literally endless numbers of things. And so you really don't know what caused what. And that's what research does for us. It helps. There's ways that we sort of control for those other things. So we know that, yes, it is this thing that this person did that caused that outcome, or we at least are able to get closer to that answer. And so just because you hear something worked for someone doesn't necessarily mean that that is even what worked for them or it's going to work for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's so accurate. I talk about this all the time. There's
Mhm.
so much misinformation in Facebook groups, and there I love that people share their experiences, but it's the way that they're sharing it where when they present it more as like a
Right.
fact. Like
And if you don't do
people,
this, you're wrong, or yeah.
right. I
Hmm.
see, like, for example, someone could say, you should follow a low oxalate diet for IC, or you should cut out dairy. And it's like, please cite your sources. Like, we need some science backing up these claims, because if not, people are just going to go try something and it could be potentially
Yeah.
dangerous for them.
Yeah, that's the other thing that research does is it helps us understand if there is a harm. And I truly think that for a strict low oxalate diet, there is harm. And I think I should also classify by what I mean by a low oxalate diet. I think for stones, like, so spinach is like legitimately 7 times more oxalate than any other food. So fine, if you want to like limit spinach or you want to limit just those few foods that I mentioned earlier, fine. Like that's not going to hurt you. But the problem is when people are going or trying to aim for zero oxalate, or for sometimes there isn't really an official definition of what a low oxalate diet is, but sometimes 50 milligrams of oxalate is thrown around, or maybe 100. And if you're trying to limit your oxalate that strictly, it is virtually impossible to get enough fiber, to get enough whole grains and other good stuff that we really need you to get. And so that's the other reason why this research aspect and why it's so important to be listening to evidence-based recommendations, because then you'll know if there is harm, because there are major harms to be had for many dietary recommendations that are found online. And so just another thing to think about.
Yeah, for sure. Is there any person or condition where a low oxalate diet is appropriate?
That strict low oxalate diet, no,
Okay.
I would say no.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, you and I have, chatted privately about what we see on social media in terms of people demonizing the oxalates
Mhm.
and calling it like poison or toxic. And it's like, what are we basing that off of? And people can get really aggressive about it. And so,
Um,
I mean, have you seen any of the research that they're using with these claims?
So generally when people cite these types of things, if they even have research, most of the time not, usually it is in animal models and with very large doses of oxalate, or it's not even actually usually tied to diet. It's like, oh, we see oxalate crystals in, say, your eyes, or we see oxalate crystals in your joints. And so then they extrapolate that information. So yes, all of that is true. So oxalate, the molecule, can impact these different places in your body, but the food that we eat is very, very different than what ends up in our body. And that is the piece that's missing. There's no data to show that reducing how much oxalate you eat results in improvement in any of these conditions, kidney stones and IC included. Um, so because like food is not like that black and white. Like our bodies are super, super complicated. It's not like what we eat ends up in our joints or what we eat ends up in our urine or bladder or wherever. Like when you eat something, first of all, that nutrient or molecule like oxalate is going to be in many different forms. We can talk about soluble and insoluble oxalate. There's huge differences there. There's going to be huge differences in how much of that oxalate gets absorbed based on your gut health, your gut microbiota, how much calcium you're taking in. That's a huge thing. If you're eating enough calcium, that is by far the biggest way to prevent oxalate stones, because then you're not going to absorb so much oxalate. Like literally hundreds of different factors are going to impact how much of that oxalate even gets absorbed into your body in the first place. And then that oxalate or whatever has to get absorbed into your, like transported in your blood, generally goes to the liver. It gets processed there, repackaged, and excreted in a gazillion different ways. And all of those things impact like what's going to end up in your urine or in your joints or in your eyes or whatever other organ they're talking about. And so the problem with all of the data that they're citing always is not, does dietary oxalate impact whatever they're talking about? And that data just simply doesn't exist. I think the message that most irks me about oxalate, you hear a low oxalate diet and oxalate is poison a lot from people who promote carnivore diets. Um, whew, and
Don't get
and
us started on that one.
and it's hysterical, honestly, because these people clearly don't understand how oxalate works in the body. So the amount of oxalate that ends up in your urine is only about 50%, max 20 to 50% accounted for by how much oxalate is in your food. So even if you were eating a zero oxalate diet, you still would have potentially a lot of oxalate in your urine, because your liver can make oxalate from a wide variety of things, most notably protein, animal protein. So your liver it does make a ton of oxalate. So if you're eating a lot of meat, beef, pork, fish, chicken, seafood, whatever, if you're eating a ton more of that than you need, your liver is going to be making more oxalate because it's had more of the stuff that it needs to make that oxalate. And so you actually are promoting oxalate synthesis by following a carnivore diet, in addition to it not being very good for your general health and kidney stone prevention, and I imagine IC as well. So, a lot of these people are just saying, oh, oxalate's poison, it's in your eyes, therefore we need to cut it out of our diet, but they don't understand the harm of cutting oxalate out of your diet, as well as how your body manages oxalate in general. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's like with a condition like IC, you're already being recommended to restrict your diet significantly. Like we're getting rid of caffeine, alcohol, carbonated beverages, tomato, citrus, coffee, or chocolate, soy, MSG,
Sounds
artificial
terrible.
sweetener. Yeah, it's absolutely the worst. But the thing is, this diet has very minimal research. Like we're really going off of just anecdotal evidence. We don't have like, this causes that. Like it's just what people have said. And our community just took it and ran with it. I think it's a starting point for people to use for an elimination diet. But it's like if you're going to take that IC diet and take it a step further and also make it low oxalate, and there's people who also do like low histamine and gluten free. And I'm like,
Gosh,
what are you
there's
even eating?
nothing left to eat.
How is your life enjoyable at that point?
Yeah. I get messages pretty frequently saying I have diabetes and high cholesterol and IBS and kidney stones. Can you help me figure out what to eat? And my answer is there's nothing left. If you're trying to follow all of those diets the way that you've Googled how you should follow them, there isn't anything left to eat. And that's not the way that it can be. Like that's not healthy. It's really, really important for both IC and stones. I know both Callie and I take a very personalized approach. Callie with an elimination diet like program, and me by really looking at your urine test and seeing what really matters for you, and then tailoring your diet for that. I think that's perhaps the biggest harm of following all of this stuff online. Like if you followed the advice of every single influencer, or even just a handful, likely you would hear that fruit is bad and sugar is bad and vegetables are bad because of oxalate and meat is bad, obviously. And like literally there's nothing left to eat. And that's just bananas. And that doesn't make any sense, and not the way that it is.
Right. it's not
Hmm.
evidence-based, and it's also not going to have, it's not going to help you live your best life or have a good
No,
quality of life. It's
no.
not sustainable. None of that is sustainable. So yeah,
Or
that's my
healthy.
approach. I mean,
Mm.
I talk all the time about how people with IC really aren't as diet sensitive as they think they are. So I mean, that's my perspective. Obviously, you're working with a different condition altogether, so you're going to take a different approach. Can you elaborate on that urine test a little bit,
Oh,
just in case anybody's curious?
absolutely. So, the gold standard to really understand why you're forming kidney stones is something called a 24-hour urine test collection. It's actually recommended by the American Neurological Association for anyone who has had more than one kidney stone or, quote, interested parties, which I have to imagine is anyone who has ever had a stone is interested in prevention. And the reason that test is critical and non-negotiable is because it tells us why you're forming stones. So that tells us what we can do about it. So often people have a stone, they go into the ER, they pass the stone, it's a miserable experience, and they're given a handout from 1975 about a low oxalate diet. And the doctor doesn't even know, they're just assuming that stone is oxalate in the first place. And they certainly haven't done a urine test to see if high urine oxalate is even the cause of that stone. Most of the time, oxalate stones are not formed by high urine oxalate. Usually they're formed by high urine calcium, which has a completely other set of things that I would do to help you prevent them. So it's so, so crucial to understand why you're forming stones in order to come up with an effective prevention plan, whether it's with medicine or food for that matter. So despite all of that, only about 20% of people with stones ever get that urine test even once, and we really should be getting them at a minimum annually. So it's kind of crazy.
That is
So,
crazy.
yeah.
Is it an easy test to do?
So I mean, you have to collect your pee for a day. So
I
like,
mean, people with IC are already doing that.
right. So yeah, I mean, there's way worse tests, right? Like there's no
Yeah.
needles. You just have to collect. Sometimes you have to get some blood drawn with it. But like, yeah, it's literally just collecting your pee per day. So it's a bit inconvenient, but I have to imagine a whole lot less convenient than having a kidney stone.
I'm like the weird person over here that it's like, if someone tells me to collect my urine for a day, I'm so interested. I'm like, how much am I producing?
I
Like,
think
let's,
you're biased.
oh my God. So many weird things that I like. I was just saying to my boyfriend, and you guys are gonna think I'm weird, but my one cat gets this dirt in her nose all the time. And once a week, I pick the dirt out of her nose and she hates it, but I love it so much.
It's like picking scabs.
Yes, it's so satisfying. So
Do you use a
that's just me.
Q-tip or like just get
No,
it
I
there with
use
your
my finger.
finger?
I'm gonna videotape this next time because it's the funniest thing.
um,
I
I
know.
do I
So,
do not have pets. Just twin 2 year olds. They're turning two next week actually.
oh,
Um, so I feel like there's things I also kind of like picking their boogers. I feel like that's the closest way that I can relate to that story because
and
it's
that to me
basically the
is
same.
weird. So it's just like
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. Oh my goodness. Oh
Yeah.
well. Is that all we wanted to go through, Melanie?
Um,
I'm gonna look to see if we had questions.
yeah. We did have one just comment to talk about soy. Um and tofu, like so soy in general. So there wasn't really context for this question,
We
but
love questions
I just wanted
with no context.
I know it's tough. But so soy and tofu are generally higher in oxalate, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have them. I think so. So any kidney diet, whether it's kidney disease or kidney stones, eating more plant protein, including tofu, is associated with better outcomes, with a delayed progression of kidney disease and fewer kidney stones, despite that oxalate content. So I think tofu can be a wonderful way to reduce the amount of animal protein in your diet because that is associated with more kidney stones. And yeah, just kind of increase your percentage of plant protein. So anything like plant protein in IC world, I have no idea.
So soy is one of the common bladder irritants.
Oh yeah, you meant yeah.
However, test it, do an elimination diet because you probably can have it.
Hmm.
And if you need help, let me know. But yeah, I haven't had too many people being sensitive to soy.
Yeah. What are the most common triggers typically?
Ah, that's a great question. I would say coffee, alcohol, citric acid.
Mm.
Yeah. I honestly I would love to see data on like what it actually is among my clients, but Yeah, I would say those are the big ones.
Hmm. You say a lot, it's usually stress related, right?
Yes, it is. It's such an underrated trigger, but it's like we are all stressed, whether we know it or not. I don't know anybody who isn't stressed. And when you are stressed and your nervous system is upregulated in fight or flight, most of us are clenching our pelvic floor, and
Oh,
that is going to contribute to pelvic floor dysfunction, which is seen in about 80 to 90% of people with IC.
hmm.
And that can create physical symptoms like pain, frequency, and urgency.
Yeah, fascinating.
I
Yeah.
know.
Stress, I feel like, is there's actually data to show that stress is correlated with kidney stones as well. We don't quite know why, maybe just because diets are different when you're stressed or whatever, but there is data to at least show that it's correlated. And I feel like stress is almost seen as something like that just all of us have and there's nothing that we can do with it, right? Like I feel like our culture has gotten to a point where it's like, oh, you're stressed, like yep, that's just
Yeah.
what it is, and
Normal.
almost seen as like a good thing. Like if you say you're not stressed, then you're not working hard enough, or like,
Yeah.
like it's this weird, like that's not okay. We need to do
Yeah.
better.
No, you're so right. Because you see people talking from like Europe or other countries, and they're like so chill and they're not stressed and they work less. And it's like, that sounds nice.
Yeah, but like that you can't do that here because then you're lazy, there's this like
No.
perception, but
Yeah.
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 Hmm.
It's not normal. There are ways you can cope with it. If you guys need suggestions, ask me. I have lots. But yeah, stress. And I've been stressed my whole life. I was just talking to someone about this. How I believe I was predisposed to anxiety because I came out of the womb stressed. I grew up with a really stressed mom, very anxious, and then I had like IBS, IC, just
Hmm.
a whole lot of health conditions that are triggered by stress. So it's like
Yeah.
I'm the poster child of stress, but I'm working on
Hmm.
it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's never going to be gone realistically, but it's okay and a very good thing to be working on it, whether it's therapy, yoga,
Yeah,
whatever works for
exactly.
you.
Yeah. Does anybody have questions before we wrap this up? I feel like we didn't get any questions live, but that's okay if we explain things well.
That must be it.
Um, Melanie, do you want to just review again what your podcast is and like where people can find you and work with you if they
Yeah,
want?
absolutely. So if you are listening and would like help with kidney stone prevention, I'd love to help you. You can check out that podcast, which is the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. I would definitely go to my website. I have a ton of stuff on there, which is thekidneydietitian.org. And if you want to work with me more directly, I have my online course, Kidney Stone Nutrition School, where you're able to submit that 24-hour urine test to me. The whole course revolves around helping you understand that test so you can come up with an effective personalized kidney stone prevention plan for you. So definitely check that out if that's something that you would like help with.
Amazing. Well, I don't think anybody has questions, so make sure to follow both our accounts for more bladder and kidney stuff, info, tips, tricks, whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you, Melanie, for doing this. This has been really helpful,
Yes.
debunking all these myths when it
Yeah,
comes to
so fun.
oxalate.
I love talking about oxalate.
Amazing. Well, thanks
All
everyone for
right, thank you for
joining
having
us.
me.
Yeah, and I will see you guys all soon.
Sounds
All right.
good. All right,
Bye.
bye, Callie.